Welcome back, everybody. This video is going to show you how to make a concept map from Mr. Charlton's biology or chemistry class. One of the things that we run into all the time in biology and chemistry is that biology and chemistry are like its own language sometimes, and all these science words are being thrown at you, and you're trying to figure out like what is that and what is that, and how does it go together, as well as doing a concept map is a good study tool for you to check and see if you understand how all of the information connects to itself from your notes and from the videos and from the activities that you do in class. So what we're going to be working on today is how to do that concept map. Just understand there is no right way, there is no wrong way to do a concept map. If you have all the words and they're all connected to each other in some fashion, you have a definition for each of the words, and you explain the connections in your own sense, in your own way of thinking, and then you write the summary based on what you put on the map, then you're good. That's exactly what we're looking for here when we make a concept map. So people get bent up on like, oh, they have to be all in a line, or do they have to all like look like a cloud? Like, no, that you can go any way you want with that. So I give you a lot of creative freedom with this, and the whole point of it is for you to make sense of it. So this would not be something we do when we first start. This would be something we do after we've learned a whole bunch of information. All right, so let's jump into getting it all set up so that you can see how it's done. Okay, so you're gonna need a sheet of paper, you're gonna need a pen or pencil, you're gonna need a ruler. Some people don't like to write words when they write a summary, like paragraphs, on this kind of paper, so you might wanna have a second line piece of paper like this. And then the thing that you're gonna get from me, whether it be online or it be in paper or something I hand out in class, is going to look like this. And this is your basic instructions as well as the words you're going to be using. So what do you get? You have the title, from what unit. You give the instructions on how to make the actual map itself. These are the words you're going to put on the map. And then you have to write a summary. And so there's some instructions on how to write the summary down here. So I give this out in class. We glue it into our notebooks. If you're working online, I will be posting these words online as well, so you'll get it in some sort of way. Okay, where do we start? I start in the top right-hand corner. I usually turn it like so, just because landscape seems to make a lot more sense than portrait. Gotta put your name, class, period. Oh, let's just say period 6. Put a date. Date helps you out because it lets you know when we did this assignment and possibly when it's due. All right, title. So again, a lot of people don't like to write just on blank empty space, so they like to have like a line to write on. Some people like to make a nice title with a line, so I'll go like so. What do we title it? Title it exactly what you got on here. So Concept Map Unit 7, that works for me. If you want to put a little mention of what topic it is, that is okay too. We'll just keep it a DNA. How about that? Just to save some space. All right, so what do we got here? Where do you start? You got all these words, and hopefully these words aren't completely unfamiliar to you. You've seen them at one point or another. They should all be in your notes. If I've done my job as a teacher, you've watched videos, done activities, done a lab, taken notes, had questions in class, all sorts of ways we've gone over this information. So there shouldn't be anything new here. You can start on any one of these words that you want. Most people tend to choose a word that kind of is like a big time term or the major word for the unit. So like if I just put DNA in the title, probably want to start with DNA as our big main word. So what do? Go find a spot on the page. It could be anywhere you want. Here, 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 here. All right, I'm just going to put it straight in the center. DNA. Put a little line under it. And then I need to define it. I need to say, okay, what is DNA? DNA, I could give all sorts of things. I could say what DNA actually stands for, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. I could say what DNA basically is. Okay, that's its name, but what is it? A molecule that holds information about proteins. When you're giving the definition, you can pull it right out of your notes. You can go online if you want, but I wouldn't really use book or online definitions because that's not going to do a whole lot for you. Try to put it in your own words. Try to make sense of it. All right, then we need to put something around this. Some people like to do circles. Some people like to do squares. Some people like to do clouds. I'll do a cloud just to make it look a little different than what we normally do. Okay, boom, there's DNA. So you can go back to your list. You can say DNA, it's on the board. Cross it off. Okay, so now I need to find a word on here that connects with DNA. There's a lot of words in here that connect with DNA. Chromosome, deoxyribose sugar, double helix, gene. I'm gonna go double helix. Let's just try one. So I'm gonna put double helix somewhere on here. I can put it up top, I can put it left, I can put it right, I can put it all over the place here. It's really what you want to go with. So I'm going to put it over here. Double helix. Put a line underneath it. Okay, now I got to say, what is a double helix? Look at my notes. It is basically two strands twisting around each other. And now I put a cloud around this. Okay, so I got two words on here. Now, when you put a new word on, it has to connect to a word that's already on the map. I only had one word, DNA, so I need to connect these two. How do I want to connect them? I could put a straight line. I could put a loopy line. I could do a line that goes up, over, and down. You can go any different way you want to go with that. I will go with an arrow line that looks like this. Why do I usually make it into arrows? Because that kind of just represents that these two have something to do with each other. And then on the line somewhere, you need to explain how do these two connect with each other. And so DNA is in the shape of a double helix. So I would actually write that. DNA's shape is a double helix. So I got two words defined and I've got how they are connected to each other. All right. So let's go back to my list. Double helix is now on and connected. Cross it off. And now I can choose a word that can connect either to DNA or to double helix. Either one works for me. Let's see. I'm going to go with deoxyribose sugar. That's the sugar that's in DNA. So I'm going to connect this back to DNA. So now I can pick a spot anywhere around here I want. I'll just put it down here. Deoxyribose sugar. And so then I got to say, all right, well, what is that? I go look at my notes. I go, well, that's the sugar in DNA. Sugar in DNA. If I want to get really smart about it, I could say in the DNA nucleotide. Cloud. Okay. And then I have to connect it. I said I was going to connect it to DNA, so let's do that. Connect it like so. How is this connected? Well, it's kind of connected by the definition. So, but I should still write it. So, deoxyribose sugar is in DNA. Okay. Go back to my list. Sugar. Cross that off. Now that one's done. And since I'm keep using this word nucleotide, it sounds like a good way for me to go, let's use that as the next word. So I'm going to go nucleotide. Where do I want to put it? You know what? I'm going to slide it over here a little bit. Let's go nucleotide right down here. So what is a nucleotide? I go back to my notes, I check it out, I go, it is a repeating, and this should be a nice word you remember from a unit, monomer in DNA. Let's cloud it up. Okay, so it's in DNA, so I could connect it this way. It's also, the sugar is in the nucleotide, so I could connect it that way. I'm going to connect it to the sugar. It seems to be a nice, easier connection to make. So one part of nucleotide is the sugar. And so all I had to do is connect it to one spot. Now, this is where I try to challenge my higher level students a little bit and go, all right, look, you only need to connect it once. That's the minimum requirement. But the more connections you can make, the more you're going to understand going into a test or a quiz. So I'm going to connect it over to DNA too. Okay. DNA made of nucleotides. Okay. So I go back to my list and I cross that off. And so I'm going to keep going like this. I'm just going to keep making word, definition, and connected somewhere. Word, definition, connected somewhere until I've put every word on this list onto my map. And so that's the first part, is to make the map. And so at the end of this, especially if you're using a regular sized piece of paper, this whole paper is probably going to be filled with words, connections. If you want to double check your work and know how I grade it, I'm going to look at the words, I'm going to look at definitions, I'm going to make sure you have all the words, I'm going to look at every single connection, I'm going to make sure that there looks to be some type of explanation of that connection. And so word connection, word connection, word connection, word connection, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to look for all the words on here. That's how I look at this part. That's part one. There's two parts to this. That's part one. Part one is to make your map. If you don't make your map, then the next part is like really difficult because you're like, what do I talk about? What do I write about? So let's show you how to do this part two. So assume my map is done. I wouldn't just stop with 4 words. I would keep going, but we're just going to do this as an example. So now I'm going to bust out my line piece of paper because I like to write with lines. I'm going to put a title on it. This is my summary. And this is where it's good practice for you to actually explain yourself in writing. You have to explain yourself in writing. It's just required. Okay, where do I start? Where do I go from the beginning? Start anywhere you want. You can start with the word that you started with. You can start with the word that you ended with. You can start anywhere you want here. I'm going to start with DNA. That's where we started. So what do I write? I turn the word and the definition into my first sentence. So DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, molecule holds information about proteins. I'm going to turn that into a sentence. DNA called deoxyribonucleic acid is a molecule that holds information about how to make proteins. Now, it's not word for word. This is where you have to be a little bit smarter and not just copy what you wrote here, but actually turn it into a complete sentence with all the pronouns and all the thes and the proper verbs and capitalize the first sentence and put periods at the end. I'm going to be checking all that. This is a writing sample. You should treat it as such. But as you can see, this guide really does help you. Okay, that's my sentence. So I got that cloud done. Where do I go from here? Which connection do you want to follow? I'm going to follow double helix. So I follow the connection. I turn this now into a sentence. Okay. The shape of DNA is a double helix, period. Okay, connection done. Now where do I go? To the next cloud. What is a double helix? It is when two strands are twisting around each other. A double helix is when two strands twist around each other in a shape. Added that at the little end there just because I thought it made it sound good. All right. Where do we go from there? Well, if I had more connections off double helix, I would go that way. But I hit an end, dead end. So where do you go? I would go back to where I last connected, and I would go to another connection. So DNA is made of nucleotides. I'm going to follow this connection here. DNA is made of nucleotides. Good. Okay. What is a nucleotide? A nucleotide is a repeating monomer in DNA. A nucleotide is a repeating monomer to make a polymer of DNA. Again, added a little bit more just to show that I know a little bit more about polymers and monomers. Now, people go, these are very simple sentences. Can I combine them? Sure. You could say DNA is made of a nucleotide, which is a repeating monomer to make polymer DNA. You can turn it into one sentence. Again, you don't have to have one sentence for every connection in every cloud, but you need to describe everything that's on your map. All right, so I'm at this cloud here. Now I'm going to come here. One part of a nucleotide is the sugar. So I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's true, but I should also explain that it has three parts. So a nucleotide has three parts, and those three parts are the sugar, the base, and the phosphate. Okay, so now let's talk about the sugar. And so I go back to my map and I go, all right, what am I going to talk about here? All right, so the sugar, it's called deoxyribose sugar. It's the sugar in a DNA nucleotide. The sugar in a nucleotide of DNA is called deoxyribose. Look at that. See, you made a mistake. Deoxyribose sugar. Okay. Good. And then I keep following my connections. Deoxyribose sugar is this sugar in DNA. I already said that. And so at this point, I am done. You would not be done because I've only got 4 words here and I got a lot more to add on here, but that just shows you how to go around. You go around, you talk about each cloud, you talk about each connection, and when you have talked about all the clouds and all the connections, this thing is probably going to be about a page. Maybe you're even going to use the other side of the page, and boom, there you go. That's your summary, that's your map. This assignment is together, so you would turn both of these in. If you are turning this in online, you would take a picture of your map, you would take a picture of your summary, both sides if needed, and submit those pictures through Jupyter Grades. And there you go. That's your grade. That's how we do it. So now you know how to make a concept map. If you ever have any trouble with this, if you're ever struggling to find definitions of words or struggling to find like how they connect, I say go to your notes first. Then you can check maybe the internet. If you're in class with me, you can ask me, you can ask anybody else in class and say like, hey, what'd you come up with for that? If you go and copy from somebody, just like any copying does, you're not going to get much out of it. You're going to copy it all. You're going to write words. You don't know what anything means. And then when the test comes around, you're not going to do good on the test. So again, You don't have to put them in any certain order, but I think by just going through the motions of it, you're going to get a lot smarter. And you'll be surprised. Like after we finish this unit, you're going to think, oh, I'm going to forget all this stuff. I'm not going to know it. And all of a sudden, like 2 months later, I ask you these questions and you're just like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know the sugar is deoxyribose. How do I know that? I don't know. It's just in there. And so that's what we're trying to do, is create knowledge, create learning, not just give you tasks to waste your time. All right. Hope you got it. I'll see you guys around.